Podcast City Network.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the 3-year anniversary of the Nest podcast. This is episode 156, consecutive episodes in a row. I'm your host, Brandon, joined as always by my co-host, Zach. Zach, we made it to 3 years. Can you believe it?
It's crazy. Time flies. And boy, it's really hard to think back on all those dumb little shows we did at the beginning to think that now here we are.
Yeah, we had some stinkers early on, didn't we? Some of them episodes were not very good. We've had some bangers throughout the years, though. I'm pretty proud of what we've done, and I'm proud of where we are, and I'm excited to see where we're going to go from here.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a fan of fantasy football, be sure to check out our show, Champ to Champ. We did our first one on Saturday, so that was awesome. Yeah, and of course, we haven't missed an episode yet, and we've got plenty of others that weren't numbered, but I mean, we haven't missed a Monday show in 3 years now. So that's pretty impressive, at least for a couple guys who don't get paid a dime to do this. So,
well, a couple guys that don't get paid a dime and a couple guys that live on, not really opposite sides of the country, but we don't live anywhere really near one another. So we've done every single episode of this show remotely. We've done it, through the internet and piecing it together way before COVID made everybody a podcast sensation. We were doing it a long, long time ago. Hey, what's up, Coach? How you doing there, Ryan? Good to see you. So let's get into it, Zach. Obviously for us baseball fans, we are coming off a pretty exciting time because we just had one of the best, if not the best, trade deadline in Major League history. All 30 teams made a deal, which is insane to me. And 10 All-Stars were traded. That's the most in MLB history. What did you think coming out of the trade deadline? How do you think your Cardinals improved during that time? And do you have anybody that stands out as a winner or loser of the trade deadline?
I was shocked at the sheer amount of, like you said, all-stars that were traded away. I mean, you go up and down the list, there's huge names. And it was kind of shocking because it basically all came out within 20, 24, 48 hours. I mean, people just were traded very close to the end. Obviously, the Cubs basically just cleaned house and got rid of everybody, which was a huge shock to me. I thought they'd at least pick one of those guys to stick around, maybe Rizzo or Baez to stick around. But no, they completely cleaned house. Nationals basically did the same thing too, getting rid of Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, Max Scherzer. They were down in the dumps, and I guess they just said we have nothing to gain from keeping these guys, so they went all in. My Cardinals picked up a couple veteran pitchers. That's pretty much where we need help the most is pitching, and they weren't in a position to make a big move this year. They did not want to give up any of their prospects, and I kind of tend to agree with that. I'm glad that they didn't just give up the world to rent a guy for half a season and then they go off to be a free agent and sign some big deal from somewhere else. A lot of people were kind of calling for them to make a push to grab Trevor Story, but again, that's a guy who's probably going to get a huge contract next year. So would that have been cool? Sure. But if you have to give up 2, 3, 4 prospects to get him for half a year, I don't know if that's true. I'd rather just wait till free agency, give him an offer. And if he wants to take it, sure, go for it. It's not my money. But yeah, I mean, overall, not the greatest, but I didn't expect them to do much anyway. We basically got rid of a pitcher who was throwing a lot of balls for an old timer who has a pretty high ERA in J-Happ. So if he can throw strikes, maybe the defense behind him can do a pretty good job of picking up those balls and getting outs. And of course, we got John Lester, a guy who a lot of Cardinals fans have had some animosity towards because he was a Cub for a long time and torched us a lot. He's a little older now, obviously, so we'll see what he can do. I don't know if any of these guys are going to be on the 2021 or the 2022 roster, but for now, hopefully, I just hope that they can eat some innings for us.
Lester is a guy that a lot of Red Sox fans wanted whenever he was a free agent prior to the season starting. They were saying, bring him back to Boston because that's where he started his career and all that stuff. And lo and behold, he was traded at the deadline. So he wasn't even worth keeping for an entire season where he was, I believe, with the Nationals. So it is what it is. I'm ultimately glad that Chaim Bloom is in charge of the ship there in Boston because he is notorious for not making those dumb trades.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something to speak on. But there were definitely clear-cut winners at the trade deadline, and there were some losers as well. The biggest winner of all has to be the LA Dodgers. They came out of nowhere and swooped in and got Max Scherzer and Trey Turner from the Nats, 2 all-star players. No kidding. They just were in the All-Star game. Max Scherzer started the All-Star game for the National League, and then now he's changing caps. He's going to pitch out in LA. How much of this move was out of necessity because of the current situation going on with the Dodgers pitching staff, with Kershaw being injured, Bauer being on his delayed suspension from MLB, and just the fact that they are trailing in the NL West trying to catch up. They had to go out and make this splash, didn't they?
Oh, I completely agree. In the NL West, it's super, super tight this year. And the Dodgers are kind of used to being on top of that division. And I think obviously we are all shocked. And I think the Dodgers are shocked that the Giants are doing so well. And they've almost maintained the lead in that division for damn near the whole year. And the Dodgers looking at that and saying, no way. And like you said, they've lost a couple of starting pitchers, big name guys. And what better way to mediate that than to sign another big name guy? And I'm sure it might be just a rental. Who knows? He might just be in a different uniform next year. But for now, they can make a push with him. And they can be pretty confident in that starting rotation.
The Trey Turner aspect was what really was interesting to me because yes, they needed the big arm in Scherzer, but acquiring Trey Turner, who's been one of the best shortstops in the National League this season, when they already have guys all around their infield that are all-stars. So they've pretty much got the National League all-star lineup going on, and it's insane. They also added left-handed pitcher Danny Duffy at the deadline, which will just continue to bolster that rotation in that bullpen. The downside to all that is that they lost a lot of prospects. So in the future, this is a trade that might hurt them, but they're putting in all their chips so that they can continue their reign of terror on the National League West and make a run at a World Series. Another team, as much as it pains me to say, that is a winner at the deadline, it's the New York Yankees. They went out and they acquired outfielder Joey Gallo and the aforementioned first baseman from the formerly of the Cubs, Anthony Rizzo. This was one that a lot of Red Sox fans really, really wanted. Rizzo was originally drafted by the Red Sox, so the whole bring him home campaign was definitely in full force. But again, just like the Dodgers, they had to give up quite a few prospects to land those 2 guys, and it was not a move that Chaim Bloom was really willing to take. But man, those lefty bats are going to feast on that short porch at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, I can't see Rizzo being a Yankee next year. I don't think he necessarily really wanted to go there. Like you said, he was a Red Sox player before, and not that he ever really made any big ties to there, but there's those guys, and Max Scherzer was one. He said, I do not want to go to the Yankees. There's those guys out there that have animosity towards the Yankees as a organization. I don't know if you saw pictures of Rizzo, but he was just like, oh God, I have to go play in the Yankees. And of course, he had a great first outing with them. But that's just one of those guys. I don't see him being a Yankee, and I think he's there simply because he didn't really have any control over the situation. But I'd look for him to be on a different team next year for sure.
Pretty much all of the former Cubs had a good outing in their first appearance with their new team. I think 3 of them had a home run, and pretty good whenever you get away from Wrigley Field and you're still raking with your new squad. That's the type of thing that these GMs are looking for whenever they bring in these guys. Can they be that spark plug? Can they give the team a little bit more momentum as it's going into that late season into postseason pushes? Another winner in my book is the New York Mets. Pretty much the entire city of New York was a winner at this one because the Mets got Javi Baez from the Cubs, who came in and made an immediate impact. He and Francisco Lindor, that's got to be one of the best middle infields in all of baseball now. And they played together on Team Puerto Rico in the World Baseball Classic, and they had a blast playing with one another. Obviously, good friends. So that's going to be something magical to watch with them. And with the struggles that we've seen from the Atlanta Braves, the Washington Nationals have now sold off everything that they had from their World Series team, so they're out of it. The Phillies, they're kind of in the mix, but kind of just a mediocre team. This could be the push that the Mets need to win that National League East and get back into the playoffs. What do you think about Javi there on the Mets?
It's an interesting acquisition because obviously they have one of the best shortstops in Lindor, and then they add basically another shortstop who is going to be playing second. I don't know. Javi Baez is kind of having a weird year this year. He's not hitting super great. He's either striking out or hitting a home run, which is, I guess that's par for the course for the league. But he's also not necessarily having a great defensive year. Just judging him off of the last stand they had against the Cardinals, there were some rather routine plays that he kind of fumbled. He fumbled an infield hit that was basically a give me to the first baseman, and he just mishandled it and couldn't make the throw. I don't know. It's an interesting case with him because he's one of those guys that's going to want a big contract, but I don't know if he's necessarily earned it this year, especially. So maybe he's going to be able to do better at the last half of this year. Maybe he can go on with the Mets and make a playoff push, maybe make some big plays in the playoffs and get some attention. But I think if he were to stay with the Cubs and just, kind of flounder out in that team, because obviously they probably weren't going to make the playoffs this year, it probably would have been bad for him, just career-wise. He probably wouldn't have had as big of a deal. But now I think if he's on this Mets team, and if they might not make it all the way, I don't think they will. But if they make, a couple good moves, a couple good plays, win a few games, maybe even make it to a championship series, it'll be better for him for sure in the long run. And if I were him, I'd be much better. I'd be much happier being with the Mets than with the Cubs.
For sure. And, like you said, if they can figure out their offense a little bit between Lindor and Baez, figure out the defensive chemistry, they might be the team that is in line to lose to the Dodgers in the NLCS.
Absolutely.
So another one of the winners in my book anyway is the Boston Red Sox. And a lot of Red Sox fans don't see it that way. They see it as Chaim Bloom dropped the ball because he didn't go out and sell off all of the pieces of the farm to get 1 or 2 acquisitions at the deadline. Would it have been great to land somebody like a Max Scherzer? Sure. It would have been awesome to see him in a Red Sox uniform pitching every 5 days, but they ended up landing Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber is another one of those Cubs guys that went off to the Nationals this year. He was hitting bombs left and right. In fact, he was one of the front runners for the National League MVP prior to getting injured around the 4th of July. So he's a dude he was swinging a really hot bat earlier in the season, a good lefty power hitter. He's going to destroy balls at Fenway. The pesky pole is going to absolutely get wore out by this dude. And he has oppo power. So he's going to pepper the green monster. His swing translates very well to Fenway Park. I think this is a good acquisition. He'll be back healthy and in a lineup in about 2 weeks. So Red Sox fans don't have long to wait until they get to see Kyle Schwarber. I know they wanted that immediate impact in the lineup, but This is a first place team, or was prior to getting swept by the Rays this past weekend, but they had built a first place team at the trade deadline with the guys that they had. They didn't really need to go out and make that big splash like some of these teams, like the Dodgers, who were trailing, like the Yankees, who were behind several games in the standings. They just needed to kind of add a little bit here or there and sustain. And by sustain, they're getting Kyle Schwarber, good pickup. They're also getting Christian Arroyo back from injury. They're getting Marwin Gonzalez back off the injured reserve. And they're also getting some guy by the name of Chris Sale, who's coming off of an injury, a Tommy John surgery, who's been absolutely mowing people down in double and single A. So he's going to be back in about 2 weeks, ready to do his thing. That's probably the best acquisition at the deadline, is you get Chris Sale for nothing. He's just coming back to your team. Sometimes the best trade is the one that you don't make, and I think Chaim Bloom specializes in that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was honestly even shocked that they picked up Schwarber. I thought they had a well enough team to just continue what they were doing. The Rays are going to put up a fight, but there was nothing that they needed to add. Like you said, Chris Sale is coming back, and that's going to be huge. I feel sorry for those guys down in the minors that have to face him. That is just not fair. So, I mean, as soon as he gets back, yeah, look for them to start kind of making that gap a little bit bigger.
Yeah, well, they've got to make up a little bit of ground now. Like I said, they got swept by the Rays, which, I mean, for those people out there that are criticizing Chaim Bloom for not making enough moves, Chaim Bloom built the Rays. He was the architect behind the Rays organization.
Right.
So for you to say like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing, the Red Sox just got swept by a Chaim Bloom built team. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's putting the pieces in place for a long-term organization.
Yep.
He's thinking, we're going to build to be the Dodgers, not we're going to build to be the team that's the best today.
Yeah. Imagine if the Rays still had Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow.
Oof.
That would not be fun.
No, it would not. That would be a monster of a team to have to face all the time. But I'm glad that Snell's gone, and I'm not going to say I'm glad that Glasnow's injured. I'm just glad that we don't have to face him right now.
Right.
But to me, Zach, I know I said the Dodgers were the big winners. They're the big winners as far as teams are concerned, but the biggest winners have to be baseball fans. This deadline was fantastic. We got treated to a frenzy of teams that are pushing in the chips, saying we are all in. We're ready to make a championship run. When was the last time in any other sport you had this many teams that were gunning for it this late into the season and were willing to put their money where their mouth was?
Yeah, I cannot think of a time. This was just out of nowhere. And I think you heard that from all over the baseball world. Just everybody was like, this is the greatest trade deadline ever. And I completely agree. Every single team that was basically in contention made some sort of a move. It might not have been a huge move, but I mean, there was all kinds of teams out there. And some people were just, shipped off to a better team. And it was wild to watch everything go down. I mean, every hour or so on that last day seemed like somebody was getting traded.
Yeah, no, it was wild. Like I was sitting here and my phone just kept buzzing. And every time I would look, it would be an MLB update. Like so-and-so's going here, so-and-so's going there. They even had some that would say, oh, it's almost a done deal between the Padres and Max Scherzer. Oh, never mind. It's actually between the Dodgers and Max Scherzer, which brings me into my next area of conversation, the losers of the trade deadline. And you have to consider the San Diego Padres one of those losers of the trade deadline because of the fact that they missed out on Scherzer, and now they have to face Scherzer for the rest of the season. So it's like a double whammy to San Diego fans, which sucks because that kind of steals all of the momentum that they had going into the back half of the season. They've got an uphill battle to climb right now, and yeah, they might still be able to pull out a wild card because I don't think any of the NL Central or NL East teams are going to rival that for a wild card. But not being able to win that division is going to be a lot harder on the Padres.
Yeah, that's a very good point. they've basically solidified themselves into a third place, maybe a second place. But I mean, that's going to be tough. The Dodgers really did make a big splash by picking up Trey Turner and Scherzer. And from what I can remember, I don't think the Padres picked up anybody. And if it was somebody, it wasn't very significant.
They did. They were actually one of the teams that also picked up an all-star, but they picked up all-star second baseman Adam Frazier a few days before the deadline. And he's been horrific since he got to San Diego. I think he's batting 176 at Petco Park. So not really lighting the world on fire like a lot of these other acquisitions have been. But he is a defensive-minded second baseman, so that is going to help down the stretch. But that wasn't the impact that the Padres were looking to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you already alluded to the other big loser in my book, and that's the Colorado Rockies. You know, apparently they hit the snooze alarm at the deadline, or they had their phone off of the hook or something, because they still have Trevor Story on their team, knowing full and well that he's not going to be signing with them and he's going to test free agency at the end of the season. Now all they can expect back in return for Story is a compensatory pick instead of getting a loot of prospects and stuff like that in return. So I don't know what they were thinking, but only getting one pick instead of getting 3-4 prospects or something like that seems like they really dropped the ball on this one.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. And honestly, I would have, if maybe even try to deal Herman Marquez, because he's probably your best pitcher. Clearly, they're not doing anything in the NL West. You might as well just trade off those good players and try to get something back from them. But it's weird. I don't understand that organization at all. They have talent, and they've had talent for several years, never been able to do anything with it. And they go and do things like pay the Cardinals $50 million to take Arenado. That they keep Trevor Story for a few more months. And like you said, he's not coming back. There's no way he's coming back. Mm-mm. I don't get it. I really don't understand it. And I know they have an interim GM right now, but what better way to make a splash, impress your boss, than to get a good trade going? To get a few good pieces for one guy is a lot better than, like you said, getting a compensatory pick. And who knows what that prospect's going to turn into.
And maybe the fact that he is an interim GM is the reason why he didn't do it. Maybe the owner didn't give him the purse.
Yeah.
The purse strings and say, hey, do what you will, make the moves that are going to make us better long term. Instead, they said, nope, we're just going to stay put. Who knows? But the Rockies are definitely losers.
That's very true. And I'm questionable of that owner too, just like I am with the Orioles and the Pirates. I mean, you've got this baseball team and you'd never try to do anything with them. And hell, even throw the Diamondbacks in there. Some of the owners just have no will to try to do anything. And I do not understand it. It's so strange to me. Just day in, day out, year after year, you have these terrible teams and you're always just shipping off good players to other teams. I do not understand it. Why would you go and buy a major league team if you're not going to try to make them win? I mean, maybe they're just cashing in on whatever revenue that the team puts in their pocket. But to me, that's just kind of a waste of owning a team.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you're not going to try to win, then why be out there trying?
Right.
But one thing that I do know, Zach, is it is time. It is time to knock out who your new NFL franchise is going to be. For the past few weeks, we've been narrowing it down from the field of 32, and we're down to the final 2 teams. And one of these 2 teams tonight will become your favorite NFL franchise. We've got the number 12 seed New England Patriots and the number 5 seed New Orleans Saints remaining. How excited are you to finally get a chance to have your own rooting interest in a professional NFL football team?
I tell you what, it's going to be weird, man. It's going to be super weird to actually root for a specific team. I honestly didn't think it would come down to these 2. I never really saw myself rooting for either of these teams ever. But I mean, they're good teams. Both have their ups and downs. Probably a little more down for the Saints, simply because there's a lot of question marks
Mhm.
I think for the Patriots, I mean, the sky's the limit, especially with this new quarterback. Who knows what this kid's going to be able to do? I'm assuming Cam is going to probably have the ball for a few weeks. But I have to imagine they're going to trot Mac Jones out there at some point just to give him a taste and see what he can do. So I think there's excitement on both sides. And I guess we'll just see whatever happens. I don't really have a dog in any of the fight. Obviously, I'm sure you would greatly appreciate it if we were able to pick the Patriots.
It would make things a lot easier for me, being that I am a Pats fan, and we could dedicate a segment of the show to specifically talking Pats. But if you end up a Saints fan, I really won't be too angry at that, because the Saints, they're another good organization. I think they have some upside, but like you said, they have several question marks as well.
Mhm. Sure.
So it will be interesting to see how they bounce back from that. But either way you look at it, you are getting a team that is moving on from a Hall of Fame quarterback and moving on with the new guy, the new generation. Either way you go, you're going to have a potential Hall of Fame head coach in either Sean Payton or Bill Belichick, and they're not going to be there long term either. So eventually you're going to have to see the new coach come in, and you're going to get to experience what a lot of fans already know, and that's the low point of an NFL franchise, when you're going through new coaches, when you're going through new quarterbacks, trying to figure it out. So by the time these two teams are back on top again, and one of them, the Patriots, may be a little closer to that than the Saints. Who knows? We'll see. The Saints do have way too many question marks, but you're gonna be in it for the long haul at this point. So I'm excited about it. And we're baseball fans, obviously, and a championship round to me is so much better when it's more than just one game.
Oh yeah.
If you can get to a best of 7 series, that's when it really gets exciting. So for the finals, Zach, we're going to make it a best of 7 series.
I like it.
I've thrown all of the questions back on the spinner wheel for this week. Once it lands, we're going to remove it, and we're just going to keep rolling. Have a best of 7. So the first team to get 4 wins is going to be your squad.
Yep, I like it. This is the way to do it.
So here we go with the first spin of the final round between the Saints and the Patriots, and it's head-to-head record. So Zach, I'm going to need you to go ahead and pull that up for me real quick, if you don't care. See what the head-to-head record is between the Saints and the Patriots.
All right. Saints versus Patriots.
This could be interesting, because these are two teams that have been around the NFL for several years, and I have no clue. I know the Saints were terrible for many years, and if they played a lot during that time, there's a good chance the Patriots won some of those games. But there's been several down years for the Patriots in their franchise as well. So,
according to footballdatabase.com, the Patriots lead the series 10-4.
wow, that's a lot more lopsided than I thought that it would be.
Yeah.
So the Pats are jumping out to an early 1-0 lead. So good thing for all you Saints fans out there, good thing we're making it a best of 7, because there's still a chance for you. Let's go ahead and get game 2 between the Saints and Twitter followers. This one is another lopsided victory for the Pats, because the Pats have 4.5 million Twitter followers to the Saints 2.9 million. So
I don't think you can find a team that has more Twitter followers. Maybe the Cowboys have more than the Patriots.
The Patriots are the most. The Cowboys are second most.
I believe that. Yeah. 4 million is a lot for a team.
That is a lot. Yes, sir. All right, let's go ahead and spin the wheel for the third round. So far, it's one-sided. City of Champions. Wow. We are getting some pretty lopsided ones.
I was going to say that's lopsided too. You might as well just say New England on that one. They've got 6.
And that one's not really even fair to New Orleans, because they only have the Saints and the Pelicans.
They used to have the Hornets though, but it's not like
the Hornets became the Pelicans.
Oh, did they? I thought they moved and became something else.
The Hornets moved. The Hornets moved from New Orleans back to Charlotte and took the name, but the franchise stayed in New Orleans as the Pelicans.
Gotcha.
So yeah, sucks, but
Well,
you know what? We're
the
up
wheel
3
decides.
nothing.
Yeah,
We're up 3-0 right now.
the wheel decides. So it's not up to us or anyone else.
That's right. And we're gonna go ahead and give it one more spin. It might be the final spin. Oh, skylines. So this one's one where we're gonna actually have to look at some stuff, Zach.
Okay.
And let's see. Let me go ahead and try to pull up some pictures, and then I'll share them with our live viewers.
So
If
basically,
you're
it's gonna be the Boston skyline versus the New Orleans skyline.
correct,
Okay, that's pretty cool. I like that.
let's see. I'm just gonna pick the first picture that I find.
I can't really picture either skyline in my head, so I don't have any bias here. So this will be just a totally neutral decision.
Okay, you might have to do this one since I'm already sharing my screen with the wheel. It
Okay.
won't let me share it again. So you might have to pull it up.
All right, 1 second.
But yeah, so it's basically going to be this 2 skylines, and both of them have pretty nice skylines from what I can see. And ultimately, you'll get to decide which one you like the best.
All right, I'm almost ready. All right, and share screen. All right, so here we've got Boston skyline.
I like that reflection right there in the Boston Harbor. That's pretty.
Mhm. Yeah, not too bad. For sure, I wish I could go full screen on some of these.
Yeah, Google Images is weird on the websites because it doesn't really allow you to do that. It wants to take you to the website where that photo is posted and all that stuff.
Yeah. But
But
anyway, you can get the idea.
yeah, you get the
got
gist.
reflection against whatever body of water is that.
That is the Atlantic Ocean and the Boston Harbor.
Okay, gotcha. And then we'll go to New Orleans.
Another city on the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've got a boat here and some city. That's not bad. Here you've got a bridge.
Mississippi River flowing by.
Right.
The Gulf of Mexico, Lake Pontchartrain or whatever it's called, one of the largest lakes in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of tough. I like the reflection off the ocean there is really cool. Whenever they get those like perfect mirror images, almost.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot. It looks nice and clean. This looks. I mean, obviously, you get the vibe, especially in some of these with like a boat or whatever. You get the vibe of like New Orleans. I don't know. Of course, there you got the stadium and stuff, but
Yeah,
I feel like more.
that's one thing in Boston. You don't get to see any of the stadiums as part of
Right,
the
'cause they're
skyline.
Foxborough, right? And not
Foxborough for the Patriots, and then the back bay where Fenway is nowhere near where those photos are. That's downtown Boston.
right. Well, I'm sure you have your bias, but what do you think here?
Honestly, for me, I do like the New Orleans view quite a bit. I like the idea of those river steamboats and all that stuff just being part of the views. I don't know. It's up to you though.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards that way too. I think the Boston skyline has like a nice city feel. Like, you can just see the architecture of the skyscrapers, but I think New Orleans has more of like a soul to their skyline. So I'm going to say New Orleans.
All right. So right now, if you're keeping score at home, it is 3-1 in favor of the New England Patriots. Of course, we were doing a best of 7, so it's game point for the Pats. Let's see if they can get it on this spin of the wheel.
I think Harvey would have called BS if the Patriots would have won in a sweep.
You're probably right. He probably would have. NFL hooligans. This is one that we've had before, Zach. Of course, for our listeners, NFL hooligans is if the two fan bases, if fans from either Boston or New Orleans were to be like soccer style hooligans, which fan base would win in a fight?
I hate to just declare a winner right away, but I've got to say immediately that Boston has the bigger hooligan fan base. I mean, if you know anything about Boston and Bostonites, if that's what they're called, I mean, that's the huge stereotype, right? I'm walking here.
That's
So,
more New York, but okay.
Okay, that's fair. But anyway, yeah. I mean, if you know anything about Boston people and especially Boston fans of Boston sports, they're kind of rowdy. I mean, in and of themselves, they don't even have to be labeled hooligans. They're just in and of themselves a little rowdy. Just as a people, they're kind of aggressive. As for New Orleans, I don't necessarily see them being aggressive. I see them being partiers. I see them putting away a lot of alcohol at their games. I don't necessarily see them as a fighting type of fan base.
Yep, I agree. So is it safe to say you've made your decision?
Yes.
And who's it going to be?
It's going to be the Patriots.
The New England Patriots. Zach, welcome aboard. Now the Patriots can go from having 4.5 million Twitter followers to having 4.5 million and one, because Zach Billings is now a fan of the New England Patriots.
Oh man, I'm gonna get so much shit from people.
Welcome aboard, brother. Welcome aboard.
Bill Belichick is the man. I just want to come out and say that he's the best coach ever.
You fit in already. I love it. So that was a fun way, and
that was great.
I tried my best to remain as unbiased as possible. I tried to give questions that some would favor some teams, some would favor others. I've got questions on here like the best barbecue. Clearly, that wouldn't be Boston.
Right. No, I think we did it fairly. And I mean, the wheel is the best way to do it. It wasn't a draw of the hat, anything like that. The internet, which had no bias, took a hold and selected our questions, and here we were. The Patriots easily could have been knocked out in the first or second round, but they weren't. And here we are.
Here we are, and you are now a fan of the New England Patriots. So
it's going to be pretty easy for you to send me stuff. At least you got that going for you.
That's true. That's true. I think I'm going to have to get you like a Mac Jones shirt or hat, or we'll get you indoctrinated into the new New England Patriots. I'm not going to go and buy you a Brady jersey or anything that.
Those days are gone.
Those days are gone. You weren't part of us then.
Right.
You're welcomed into the family now. And I couldn't be more excited, because now we can have our weekly Patriots segments.
Yep. Perfect. So hopefully there's some New England fans out there that can tune in, because boy, is this about half of this show is going to be New England based.
And I'm excited about it. But we can talk about some other NFL teams and other NFL news, like the Buffalo Bills potentially moving to a new home. Did you hear about this news?
I did.
Apparently, they're not happy with their stadium situation in Buffalo, and they are looking to Austin, Texas as a possible relocation. The Bills Mafia may riot if this happens.
Oh, I'd go further than that and say that they will riot. They will burn that entire city down if the Bills leave. That's the only thing they have. Sure, they have the Sabres in NHL. They haven't been anything in a long time. I think the only thing that Buffalo residents have to look forward to is tailgating for those games in the freezing cold, bashing through tables, hitting people with chairs, getting absolutely obliterated, eating chicken wings. And if you take that away from them, it's going to be a bad time for everybody.
It's interesting you mentioned the Sabres, because the ownership group of the Bills also owns the Sabres.
Oh, okay.
So they do have that going for them. But like you said, the Sabres have kind of been run down as of late, and that ownership group really doesn't seem to care too much about that.
Right.
The Bills have been great as a football team, but it doesn't even seem like the ownership group really cares about that either.
Yeah, which sucks. It kind of goes back to that thing that I was talking about with the baseball ownership. There's owners out there that really don't care. And I think this was just a business venture for some of those billionaires, and they collect whatever revenue that they get a share of, and they really don't care about the rest of it, which really stinks, because
it does.
I mean, you said it, they have a great team. This is the first time since the Doug Flutie days where they have a really good quarterback. And I think they could capitalize on this for sure, but If they end up moving, I hope they do a complete rebranding, kind of like the Oilers did. They're not the Tennessee Oilers. They have a whole new look. I think they need to do that if they actually do end up leaving.
Yeah, I do too. Hopefully they don't, because that is such a premier NFL franchise. And frankly, if I'm a Bills player, I want to stay in Buffalo, because whenever teams come to play you in late December, early January, and they have to go to that tundra that is Buffalo, New York, that's an advantage. If you're already used to playing in that environment, it's just like going to Green Bay and playing there, or going to Chicago and playing there, going to New England, our team, and playing there in Foxborough. Playing in those cold weather places, if you're used to it, is an advantage to your team. And, think about a team like the Jacksonville Jags, who have to travel to one of these cold teams. They're in a whole different world at that point.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. It's always a huge advantage in football to be one of those cold weather teams. I don't know. I wonder if this is just kind of a ploy to get the stadium that they want, or the changes that they want, and they're just kind of threatening, like, hey, we could leave.
It may be.
I don't know. It's hard to say with stuff like this. So I guess we'll just see.
Yeah, it may be. That may be the case, but it is what it is. Carson Wentz is hurt again. And now he's going to be out for 5 to 12 weeks. Now, I know what you're saying. I know you're sitting there thinking, well, it's still training camp. It's still preseason. That's, if it's 5 weeks, he might only miss the first game of the season, or he may be back for week 1 of the NFL season. But how healthy is he going to be? If the doctors are saying 5 to 12 weeks, 5 weeks is the minimum. Like, if he's superhuman and can heal up that quickly, then yeah, maybe he'll be back. But is he going to be 100%? He's missing all of training camp. He's missing all of preseason. So he's not going to be taking these snaps with the first team offense. He's going to be a little bit rusty, you would think. And if he misses 12 weeks, then that brings us up to half the season he's out. This is a big blow to the Indianapolis Colts. This is a team that seemingly has taken big blow after big blow from the quarterback position. If you remember, Andrew Luck up and retired during the preseason one year when they thought, hey, this is going to be our squad. We've got a Super Bowl contender on our hands. Since then, it's been a carousel at the quarterback position. Now you bring in Carson Wentz. He's reunited with Frank Reich, and all of a sudden he's hurt. Thoughts?
I mean, have you heard this story before? Carson Wentz is hurt yet again. People say guys that get hurt a lot are made of glass. I think that's giving Carson Wentz way too much credit. He is made of like paper mache or something, because for whatever reason, this guy just cannot stay healthy. It sucks. And I think it sucks for Colts fans, especially because, like you alluded to, they lost Andrew Luck. And if you remember, Andrew Luck was basically just saying, like, my body can't take it anymore. I can't take the abuse. I wonder if that has something to do with Carson Wentz's injury. Sure, he's been injured before, and he kind of has a history of injury now. But I got to think, and this was just in training camp, I wonder if there's something up with the offensive line, maybe the coaching staff of the offensive line. They're just not doing their jobs. I don't know, but they basically ended Andrew Luck's career short because he couldn't get enough protection. And now, without ever even playing a live game, their new toy in Carson Wentz is hurt. And like you said, he may not be available until half the season's already over. You got to look internally, I think, at this point.
It's being reported, Zach, that this injury is something that's been lingering since, wait for it, high school.
Jesus.
So you mean to tell me that this guy got hurt in high school, went all the way through college, played several years in the NFL, and now it's causing him to have surgery and miss games? Something's off with that. Somebody didn't do a good job of assessing him, but here we are. He's going to miss. Jacob Eason is the next man up on the Colts roster as far as quarterback. Nobody really knows who he is. I don't really know who he is. I know he's a tall kid. He played college football, I'm assuming somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure he played somewhere.
and that's about it. That's about all I know. He's a young guy from what I can tell, and he hasn't really made an impact in the NFL. Maybe now's his chance to do so. Or do you think the Colts might try to make a trade before the season starts? There are two guys in particular out there that I think may be options for the Colts. One is the mullet mania Minshew from down in Duval, because now we know he's not going to be a starter because Trevor Lawrence has come in. Minshew still wants to be a starter. He famously said a couple weeks ago that he hasn't taken a dump in weeks because number 2 is not even an option for him.
I love that.
So maybe he is looking at, hey, trade me. Let me go be a starter in Indianapolis and show what I can do. That could be an option for him. But then again, you also have to consider those are two AFC South rivals.
Yeah.
Are the Jags going to want to throw the Colts a bone? Probably not. Another option would be the third string quarterback down in Chicago. Some guy that has had a little bit of success coming in and replacing an injured Carson Wentz before. Some dude by the name of Nick Foles. Ever hear of that name?
I think so. He won like a championship or something at some point.
Something like that. There's a statue of him outside of the stadium there in Philadelphia for winning a Super Bowl. He's now a third string quarterback in Chicago, and he had some things to say about the topic. Zach, you want to go ahead and remove the overlay for me?
Yes. One sec.
Just before we came in here, we learned that Carson's going to have surgery in Indy. So in terms of that familiarity, you're talking about comfort level. Is that a spot with Frank that you would be comfortable?
Listen, Frank Reich is one of my favorite, if not favorite, coaches of all time. He understands me as a player. He understands me as a person. But, right, I haven't had any talks with him. I don't know. I'm a Chicago Bear right now. But I think if he knows me, he understands. I mean, y'all watched the 2017 season in the playoffs where he changed the offense and built it around me, and y'all saw what happened. So he understood my mentality as a player, and he was able to build it around me and put me in a successful position and my teammates. But that being said, they have Carson, and Carson and I have a lot of history. I have a lot of respect for Carson. He's a tremendous player. He's going through adversity once again, but he'll bounce back. And you know what? He might miss a few games, but I know he'll be back out there. But we haven't had any talks. So right now I'm a Chicago Bear, and I'm going to keep slinging it with these third stringers, and we're going to dice them up.
So he is a Chicago Bear right now. He's saying the things that he has to say. I'm a Chicago Bear right now. I'm with the Chicago Bears. But Frank Reich knows me. He knows what I can do. Look back at 2017, how he built the team around me, and we went on and won a stinking Super Bowl against Tom Brady and the Patriots. This is a guy that, to me, he's saying, hey, I'm here. Mm-hmm. Come get me.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally picked up that too. And he kind of threw a little, not shade necessarily at Carson, but he said, Carson and I have history. I basically saved his ass and won the team a Super Bowl without him ever even participating, basically.
Yeah. So, and then got kicked out of town as a thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. A very strange relationship they have. I'm sure there's probably some animosity there if I had to guess. But I mean, hell, if I'm the Colts, why not pick him up? Like you said, he's a third stringer. I don't think that the Cubs are really looking to trot him out there at any point. Otherwise, Bears. He'd be or Bears, yeah. Otherwise, he'd be first string, second string. But third string is like the emergency guy. So I wouldn't imagine that they would want too much for him. Another guy that they probably should have picked up a couple of years ago, and it's probably a little too late. But I think when Andrew Luck left town, picking up Ryan Fitzpatrick for them would have been a great move. I mean, he's a veteran. He wouldn't have cost that much. You could have probably done something for him. He's a good player for you. Maybe you could have had him for a couple of years while you figure out your situation. I do not think, even if Carson Wentz was healthy, I do not think that was a good pickup by the Colts. But here we are, and he's hurt for him. So I guess we'll see what they do.
Yeah. They're going to have to make some kind of move if they want to salvage this season, especially if the prognosis for Wentz ends up being, that latter, the 12 weeks or so.
Yeah.
And he's going to end up missing a good majority of the season. Another team that you got to consider in all this that's kind of taking it a bad break with all this, no pun intended, is the Philadelphia Eagles themselves. because their draft pick that they get in return for trading Wentz to the Colts is dependent on his performance with the Colts. If he is on the field for 75% of the snaps this season, they get a first-round pick. If he's on the field for less than that, that pick is dropped down to a second-round pick. So that's a big deal for them too. The potential first-rounder gets shifted to a second-rounder based off of him not being healthy. That's like one more big screw you from Carson Wentz to the Eagles and their fans.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Another interesting situation that we're definitely keeping an eye on is that at least one anonymous GM has reached out to the Houston Texans about the services of one Deshaun Watson. He wants the Texans to include some sort of insurance if a deal is made. So basically the insurance would be that if Watson ends up getting suspended as a result of his allegations and he misses 8 games, half the season essentially, then one of the first round draft picks that would be traded would be bumped down to a second. If he misses the entire season, then 2 of the first round draft picks that is involved in the trade would get bumped down to second round draft picks. So they're trying to work out a deal so that if he can't play this year, it kind of lessens his value, but it's all going to be in the contractual language. So that kind of gives them a little bit of a safety net, if you will. Could that be the Indianapolis Colts trying to hedge their bets and bring in Watson in case Wentz isn't going to be the same?
It's possible, but I don't know if they're super into that kind of stuff. They don't seem like that kind of team to me. I don't really know who it could be. We've talked about the Dolphins before, maybe the Broncos. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I will say that that's a very smart move by that organization to try to build in some insurance if this all goes south, and if the day before week 1 starts, the NFL comes out and says that he's suspended, you don't get screwed out of 3 first-round picks or whatever they're asking for. I say that's a very smart move. It's probably going to have to wait a little while for the Texans to try to make that actually happen, because I think the Texans are still probably going to look to get whatever they can for him. Like you said, we're still in training camp. People are probably knocking on the door, asking for other kind of deals. So I don't know, but I think that's a very smart move on whoever's team that is, for them to try to build that in.
Yeah, I do too. I think that is very smart to try to take care of yourself in the long run.
Absolutely.
And if he ultimately is dealt before the start of the season, it will be interesting to find out later on who has been inquiring about him, who ultimately pulls the trigger and brings him in. Because like we talked about last week with Jared, this isn't really trading for this season coming up. Yeah, you hope that he can play for you this season, but this is for the next decade. Mm-hmm. You're bringing in a franchise quarterback for the next decade, and you're hoping that you're hoping all these allegations and all that stuff either are swept under the rug, not true, or it's not going to be a long-term thing for him. And 2, you're kind of hoping that he can just stay healthy for that amount of time, because bringing in a guy of that caliber and that talent, it's going to cost you a lot in draft revenue, and you're going to hope that guy is going to be a part of your organization for the long haul.
Yeah, 100%.
And, speaking of quarterback drama, we have more quarterback drama in the NFL, and it's in Minnesota with the Vikings. They are experiencing an outbreak of the COVID-19 variety among their quarterbacks. Every single quarterback that has a deal with the Minnesota Vikings right now is on the COVID-19 exempt list. So if they die, they die, I guess. Right?
Yeah.
That's what they like to say in Minnesota.
Yep.
Now, I know this is just training camp and the season is still about a month and a half away, but does this tell you the state of the league going forward? Are they going to have this kind of a deal with all these teams where, we're seeing a lot of guys on COVID list missing out? And what does this tell you for the Vikings? Are they going to be even ready to start the season? Are they going to be behind the curve because they're not able to really practice with one another right now? There's a lot of question marks in the air right now.
Oh, absolutely. They're going to have to take the preseason extremely seriously, because they're losing a lot of practice time right now. Like you said, they're going to be behind. behind the curb for sure. They're lucky that this is happening at this point and not
No.
week 4, week 5.
Imagine if they were just eating forfeits, like 2-3 forfeits in a row.
Exactly. Yeah. If the NFL is serious about what they've said, as far as, it doesn't matter if you have positives, you're getting a forfeit if you can't play. If you have to go out there with 0 quarterbacks and you have to forfeit, that sucks for any team out there. So I hope to not see this season. It's going to be hard to say. It really is, because I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, especially with like the vaccinated people still testing positive, it's going to be wild if this stuff isn't kind of, I wouldn't say fixed, because I don't think you can fix it, but what's going to happen if we have another, crazy surge like we did last year in the fall, and just all over again? They basically have to, postpone games or forfeit or whatever they end up actually doing. It's going to be another wild season, I think, because like we said, with Jared, you can't just postpone a game and play 2 next week. The NFL is a whole different beast when it comes to this stuff.
Yep, it is going to be a wild season, and Zach, I'm excited that you're going to be cheering for the Patriots all
Let's
along.
go. It's the Patriot way.
That's the Patriot way, and we're going to continue each and every week throughout the football season to bring you not only episodes of the Nest podcast, but like Zach said earlier, Champ to Champ is a thing. That is a real thing now. We're doing every Saturday night talking about fantasy football. And what's on the docket for this week, Zach?
This week, man, you sprung it on me. What are we doing? Jared's coming on.
Quarterbacks. That's right. Jared's coming on. We're doing quarterbacks. We're ranking our top quarterbacks in PPR leagues for fantasy football.
That's right.
So maybe not necessarily the best quarterbacks if you're building a real franchise around, but if you're drafting for fantasy football specifically, that's how we're going to rank them out. And you may be surprised with who ends up on our lists, because maybe not the best quarterback, but some of the best fantasy quarterbacks are different, I guess you could say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just off the top of my head, you got to kind of think of people who don't necessarily have a stud running back to rely on. If a guy has to constantly throw, he's going to give you more points, essentially, because he's not going to have to hand the ball off to a running back that's going to get him 100, 200 yards or something like that. So those guys kind of tend to give you a little bit more points wise, for sure. I mean, if you've got like a Derrick Henry behind you, you're probably not going to have to throw all that much. Although Ryan Tannehill does put up some decent numbers fantasy wise. Yeah.
I mean, if I'm building a franchise, I might look at Tannehill as a good option, but for fantasy, you might be right. Mm-hmm. Of course, with Julio Jones added in there, he's going to be throwing the ball a lot more, I think. To your point, Zach, like these running quarterbacks, like your Lamar Jacksons, your Josh Allens, your Patrick Mahomes, those guys are a lot more valuable in fantasy than somebody like an Aaron Rodgers, who is the reigning MVP of the league.
Yeah.
I believe it was 2019, so the year before last. Rodgers was ranked as the 15th best quarterback in fantasy.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. Of course, the Packers also have a tough matchup this season with a lot of defenses that are good against the pass. So we may see Aaron Jones as a more valuable running back this year, because Rodgers isn't going to be that prolific as he was last year.
Yeah, for sure. Before we wrap up, I do want to just kind of touch on something that I thought was kind of weird. And I'm sure you've seen this, but one of the top pitchers out of college, Kumar Rocker, did not come to a agreement with the Mets, so he will not be signing a deal with the Mets. And as far as I know, he will just then re-enter the draft in 2022. Very strange. And I don't know the details, obviously, but that's a very strange thing to me. I mean, you went to college, you're obviously done with that, and the next logical step is to go to the draft, get drafted, start making money, start going up the ladder in minor league baseball, and try to get on that starting rotation. I don't really see what the issue is here. I mean, the Mets aren't an awful team. I could understand maybe if he was signed to the Pirates and he just didn't want to be part of that organization.
I saw something about Rocker, and he had some sort of undisclosed either elbow or shoulder injury or something like that, and maybe the Mets were like, well, we're not going to pay you like $7 million a year if you're already hurt. So maybe they were like saying, oh, all we'll pay you is this amount. And he's like, no, I'll just re-enter the draft next year. I'll go rehab, try to get my arm straight. And then, he'll be in there again next year. Maybe he's a little bit pissed off that he slipped down the rankings so far, because he was touted as a potential 1-1 guy, So maybe he was a little bit upset that he slipped.
Yeah, that could be.
One last thing before we sign off for tonight is, we thank everybody that shares all of our episodes and has been helping us reach a bigger audience each and every week. And we promised this week that everybody that had been sharing our episodes leading up until this 3-year anniversary spectacular would be entered into a drawing to win a Nest Podcast t-shirt. And the winner of that t-shirt is Jose Carino.
Nice.
Jose is a longtime supporter and listener of this podcast. He's actually been around since episode number 1.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of cool that he's the winner of the Nest Podcast t-shirt. So I'll get with him offline and get his address and get him squared away with whatever shirt he picks from the Nest Podcast store. If you want your very own Nest Podcast t-shirt or swag, the link is in the description. You can go out there and check it out. We've got all kinds of shirts, hats, stickers, whatever, you name it. There's even a Waffle House inspired apron that you can pick up. So go out there, check it out, see what we have, and pick yourself something up. It'll make you look good this winter.
For sure. Sorry about your Cubs, Jose.
Yeah, the Cubs have sold off everything, but at least you got a shirt coming your way.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Thanks for the past 3 years. We definitely enjoyed it, and we'll see you around for this next year. Peace.